Hello, welcome to your 9th C# tutorial. This one is going to be about a different kind of loop. It's called the for loop, and it is a bit more complicated to use than the while loop, but it's not complicated. It just has a couple more steps to it, and it also simplifies your code. So without further ado, we will now go through that. Actually, we're going to combine it with something else we know, which is an array. And also the keen-eyed of you might have noticed that this is an array, and I'll get to that probably a couple episodes from now. So I'm going to make an array. We're going to call it numbers. Remember, give it descriptive names, and then we're just going to have a couple numbers. I'm just going to do like that. And now, also, Visual Studio will expand your stuff sometimes. That's just to make it more readable for anybody who's trying to read your code later. So now for the for loop, you don't need to define a variable out here called like increment equals 0, although you can. Usually it's just defined inside of here, because what you do is you initialize some variable. So if I do int increment equals 0 like this, and then you do a semicolon here, which might seem kind of strange, but you do put a semicolon here, and then next part you write the condition. So I'm just gonna do a contrast here with the while loop. So whoops, increment equals 0. Now this part here, which is the condition for the while loop, is the same thing as here for the for loop. So if I were to write increment is less than 20, and then increment, this is the actual part where it's added to it. By the way, if you're curious, increment plus plus simply means increment equals increment plus 1. And that might seem mathematically impossible, but you should keep in mind that all it's saying is this equals this thing's value plus 1, not this is actually equal to. Because you obviously can't write in math, like for example, x equals x plus 1, because that means x equals infinity. And that's not really okay in normal math. But here it is, because we're just assigning it, not actually doing math here. So this is the same thing as writing while increment is less than 20, and then in here writing increment plus plus. They both have different uses. Oftentimes you will end up using a for loop instead of a while loop because they're more practical for what you need to do. There's also another kind of loop called a Foreach loop that I'll go over in a second. So I'm going to delete this. So you need to assign a variable, then you need to have a condition for when it's going to end, and then you have an increment of some sort. You can also do, in case you're curious, like plus equals 2, and plus equals is simply the same thing. So if I write x plus equals 2, that means x equals x plus 2, it's just shorter. So increment plus equals 2 means increment is increased by 2 instead of by 1, which is what plus plus is. You can also do minus minus, and that would increase it by 1, but you won't want to do that because that would end up in an infinite loop, and we don't like those. So, and to illustrate how this works, I'm just going to write console.writeLine, and then I'll get to our array in a second. Run this, you'll notice 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Hooray, it works. Now the reason why I have the array, you can do while it's less than another variable. We're going to do numbers.length because numbers.length is, awesome. And we want to, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to display all of these numbers, and then I'm going to give you a reason for why you might want to do this later. So what we're going to write is console.writeLine numbers, and then you do increment. You can put a variable in here. So this essentially says numbers, and then you want to access the element, or the number in this case, at whatever index or place that increment currently is. So if increment is 0, that means you access the 0th one. When it's 1, you access the next one, and 2, and 3, and so on. And we do while less than numbers.length. You do not want to write while it's less than, 7. Because if you do this, it will work. You can write while it's less than 7. But then let's say you want to, well actually, I want to have a 60 at the end of here. Now your code won't work properly. It's always better to have it be a more dynamic code. Essentially, it's based less and less on actual constants or numbers that you hard-coded, which essentially means just numbers that you put in, rather than numbers that come from other things. So you have to change the minimal number of things to make your code work again. So like this, now if we compile it and then we run it, you do 2, 5, 6, 7, 12. It's essentially exactly what we had in the array. And the reason you might want to do this, for example, is if you want to add up all these numbers. So we're going to make another variable called int x equals 10. And now we're just going to do x plus equals numbers increment. And this just does x equals x plus this next number. So essentially, we're just going to write console.writeLine x at the end here, and you'll notice that it is, in fact, all these numbers added together. If I got a calculator and did it, it would be the same thing. I don't feel like doing that right now because I know it's right. So if you want to add up all these numbers, for example, this is a way you could do it. And then, for example, let's say you want the average of them. So you do x divided by numbers.length, because of course it's the total divided by the amount of items you have, which is numbers.length. So if you do this, the average of this is 168. I'm going to actually pull out my calculator to do this for you. Plus 7, plus 12, plus 8, plus 12, 35. And it'll be a little bit off because of the rounding. And then you divide this by 8, and you get 166. So it is a little bit off. Oh, whoops. Oh, wait, no. Wait, did I forget a number? No, I didn't. Okay, good. Anyway, it is a little bit off, but it is correct as far as it's concerned. So at any rate, thanks for... Oh, wait. Nope, just kidding. Ah, got you there, didn't I? Anyway, I'm going to teach you about this other kind of loop called a for-each loop. This is more useful for what we're actually doing. It'll make it even easier. What you write is for each, no space. Then in here is where the magic happens, essentially. You write your type, you write a variable type, which in this case is int, because we have an array of integers. So int, you can call this whatever you want. I'm going to call it something like add to let us know that we're adding these numbers. The next you type in, and then you type whatever array your numbers are in. In our case, it's numbers, so int add in numbers. Essentially, this means for each number inside of this array, numbers, we're going to call it add. And we're going to run through each of them, and we can access that value using the word add instead of having to do something cumbersome like numbers increment. Usually you don't need the normal for loop because you can just do this instead and it's cleaner. Now all I have to do is write x plus equals add. And this is a lot easier to understand, I think you'll agree. X plus equals add is easier to understand than, you know, for int increment equals 0, increment is less than numbers.length, increment plus plus x equals, or x plus equals numbers, brackets, increment. This is easier. X plus equals add. Hooray. And it'll give us the exact same output, 168. And it's just really just a lot easier to understand like this. Oh yeah, the reason why it's off a little bit because I started at 10. Anyway, yeah, it should be 166. That's why it was off. Anyway, so that's the for each loop. It's very useful. And I'm going to teach you about another kind of collection, which is what an array is. It's a collection of things that you can use. That is probably a better choice than an array, honestly. But for right now, the array will serve our purposes. So thanks for watching. Sources in the description. Ask in the comments if you need any help, like always, and goodbye.